Hi, I'm Eben Pagan. Welcome to Wake Up Productive, the inner game and outer game of time management and personal productivity. The promise of this program is that if you go through the entire program, you do the exercises, and you use the methods that I'm going to teach you, you will wake up in 90 days at least twice as productive as you are right now, even if you're already pretty productive. So let me say that again. The promise of this program, of Wake Up Productive, is that if you will engage with this program, if you will take the methods that I'm going to teach you, take the exercises, and use what you're going to learn, you will wake up in 90 days twice as productive as you already are, getting twice as much done, twice the results. All right, so let's get started. Now, as we talk about productivity and time management, what are we really trying to accomplish? What do I really mean by that? Well, I think what we're all looking for in life is what you might describe as success. And success is happiness, joy, fulfillment, feeling good inside all the time, right? That's what we're all really looking for, is that feeling of success, of enjoyment, of productivity, really. So I think if we're going to talk about this topic of time management and productivity, that we should get to the end game, to the big picture, and ask, what's it all about? Why are we trying to become productive, and why are we trying to become masters at time management? And I think the reason is because we're trying to become successful. We're trying to have success in life. And what does success mean? Well, to most people, success means feeling good all the time, feeling happy, feeling fulfilled, feeling like we're making a difference to ourselves and to others. And what I've discovered after studying this topic for a long time is that success can be broken into two main categories. There's inner success and there's outer success. And I found that inner success boils down to the feelings that we have inside, the feelings of joy and contentment and fulfillment, and just that feeling that everything's okay and everything in the future is going to be great, and the feeling of external success, of achievement, of productivity, of making things happen. And when we don't have those two things in our life, we don't feel successful. If we only have one of them, all right, if we only feel kind of good inside, but we're not productive on the outside, we don't feel as successful. And if we're only achieving external success, but we don't feel good about it, then we don't really feel success. So we want to marry these two concepts. We want to marry the inner game and the outer game. And what I've found can be a roadblock to success is the feeling that we're not in control of our lives, like we don't control what's happening, or like we're being controlled. And I think this idea of feeling out of control, or like we're not in control of our lives, is one of the core issues around feeling internally like we're failing or like we're not successful. So that's kind of the heart of the inner game, the real key point. If we don't feel like we're in control of our lives, then it's almost like there's a barrier to feeling happy and successful. And in the external world, I think this idea of productivity, and I'm going to be using that word a lot, being productive, getting things done, getting results, I think that's a real key component to feeling successful and feeling like you're making a difference. And if you don't feel like you're getting anything done, if you don't feel like you're achieving results, like you're making change for the better out in the real world, that's something that prevents you from having that real feeling of success. And I think that the more we feel like we're in control of our life from the inside, and the more that we feel like we're producing results and we're getting things done in the outside, the more successful we feel. So in this program, we're going to be using this concept of success, of feeling like we're in control, feeling optimistic, feeling satisfaction with life, and feeling just good, like everything's okay and everything's going to be okay in the long term. And that external feeling of achievement, of results, of making a difference, of getting things done, we're really going to aim to achieve those things so that when we get to the end, you feel like you're more in control of your life than you've ever been, and like you're more productive, you're getting more results than you've ever gotten. And I really believe that you can do that if you'll take what I'm about to teach you and implement it. Now, I want to let you know one key component here, and that is that if you're going to become more successful, more productive, a better time manager, then you need to understand a distinction. And this distinction is the difference between being in something, being kind of in the forest, or zooming out and working on it. Okay? Looking at the forest as a whole. If you're in the forest looking at an individual tree, you're inside of it. You can't see it whole. You can't get a view of yourself. You can't get any perspective or any what I call altitude. When you zoom out and you can see the situation whole, when you're not in it anymore, you get amazing insights. And so what we're going to be doing in these trainings is you're going to be zooming out. You're going to be getting the 40,000 foot view. It's like getting up in the helicopter and looking over your life. And then when you do the exercises, you're going to get back into it. You're going to work in it. So as you're learning, we're looking at it, we're working on it, some of the exercises working on it, then you're going to get in, you're going to do exercises working in it, and then I really want you to take what you learn and implement it in your life. If you're not taking the things that you learn and using them, if you don't find yourself every day for the next 90 days using at least one thing that you've learned in this program, then one of us is doing something wrong. So make sure you take what you use and you go into your life and you use it. So you're going to work on it and you're going to work in it. You're going to work on it and you're going to work in it. You can only understand the macro perspective in contrast to the micro perspective. So when you're in it, you'll be able to look out and remember, oh yeah, so this is why I worked on it. And when you're zoomed out and you're looking in from the macro and you can see that specific thing that you need to do, you'll only be able to understand that specific from the bigger, more abstract perspective, and you'll be able to say, oh, that's what I'm doing differently. So we understand these different views in relationship to each other, and you need to zoom in, you need to zoom out, you need to zoom in, you need to zoom out. You need to look at it from different perspectives, and that's what will help you make the most progress. So make sure you're doing that on a regular basis. Now, I've spent the last almost 15 years studying self-help, personal development, the human potential movement, all of these different areas that kind of allow us humans to go in, take out the tool set, and work on our own minds, work on our own emotions, work on our own productivity, right? It's self-help. Have you ever heard the phrase, help yourself to some self-help? Well, I've helped myself to a lot of self-help. And one of the things that I've been particularly interested in is the idea of productivity, because productivity is leverage. You know, Archimedes, if you've got a lever long enough, you can move the world. Well, productivity is huge leverage. If you can get more productivity out of the same amount of time, then you can get more results long term. And if you can compound that and do that long term, I mean, you can get amazing results in your life. Well, as I've studied different personal productivity methods and time management approaches, and I've gone to the seminars and gotten to know some of the experts, I've always found that there's a piece of the program that doesn't resonate for me or doesn't fit for me. Or maybe it fits for me, but somebody else that I know, it doesn't really work for them. And that's, I think, because we all have different personality types. We have different personality styles. If you go to a regular time management seminar, that's a full-day time management seminar where they've got the planner and the step-by-step methodology, what I've discovered is half the people in the room don't need the seminar because that's how they run their life anyway. They wake up every day and they make a list of the stuff that they need to do and they check the boxes off and they stay very organized. And half of the people in the room are never going to use it because that's not how they work. They're not list makers. They don't think sequentially. So I said, well, if that's just something that works for some people, like what works for everyone? So my hunt has been for things that work for most people or everyone. Now, not everything that I'm going to share with you is going to resonate for you. You're going to try some things in this program and, they might not fit for you. They might not work. That's fine. Throw them away. I don't want you to believe every single thing I say. I'm not trying to talk you into this stuff. I think, though, that if you'll try the methods that I'm going to give you, you'll find that most of them will really help you out. Because what I've done is I've tried to synthesize all of the pieces of the best personal development and time management systems, incorporate a lot of my own learnings and things that I've brought to the table, and create a system that literally is universal, that'll work for anyone. And it's founded upon a couple of key principles, which I'm going to share with you here in a little while. And I think that if you'll use these, you'll get my experience of almost 15 years of doing this stuff, and you'll be able to put it into your own life. Now, I want to mention here, one of the things that inspired me to create this program, Wake Up Productive, is that over the last year, especially of my own life, I have woken up more productive than I have ever been. Now, I've met some very special people who I'll also tell you about, and I've learned from them directly, and I've been studying a lot of higher level methods and so forth, which I'll also teach you about in this program. So they've pushed me over that edge where I went from doing a pretty good job to I feel like I'm far more productive than I've ever been. So being in this state where now I'm consistently more productive than I've ever been in my life, I feel like this is a great place to share from. And another thing that's inspired me to do it is I'm creating a new program right now for another one of my businesses. And as I'm doing that, I'm having to create a huge amount of teaching and content. And I've never been busier than I am right now in my life, but I've also never been more productive. And a few weeks ago, I was reflecting on this, and I was thinking about how it's almost too much stuff that's happening in my life. It's so much that there was a time in my life where I would have been overwhelmed. So I say it's almost too much because I'm at the edge of my comfort zone here. And you'll find that that's where change happens. That's where growth happens, is at the edge of your comfort zone. But as I was reflecting on this a few weeks ago, I thought, now, I've got all this chaos happening and all this stuff, and I have to create all of this training, and I have to deliver all these live teaching and coaching and other seminar things, and why am I not overwhelmed? Okay? I mean, sure, there are some periods during the day where I go, wow, that's just a lot of stuff, and I need to tune out for a sec. But why don't I feel overwhelmed? Why don't I feel just like I can't function? I mean, a lot of people that I know, if they were dealing with a fifth of the things that I'm dealing with right now, they would just kind of shrivel up and say, I just can't handle this all right now. And it struck me that it's because I've finally gotten to that tipping point where I have enough positive routines and a structure and kind of a habitual process that it just renews me and it supports me. A few months ago, I did a live training program where I taught some of our higher-end coaching members, some of our very high-end, very successful business owners and CEOs, and I taught them some of these methods during a special live 2-day program. And I actually taught some of these methods, a few of them last year in my $10,000 a person live altitude training. And the feedback I've been getting from these people is amazing. Some of them are increasing their productivity by 50 and 100% by just implementing a few of the ideas that I'm going to share with you here. And so when you put all these things together, they all culminated, and I realized now is the time. It's time now to teach this stuff. I can really see it. I see how it all fits together. It works. My life is flowing and really working, and I'm more productive than I've ever been. And I've started teaching these methods, and I can see the results. Other people are getting consistent, very powerful results. And so that's my reason why. That's why I'm teaching this right now. And I think that if you'll take these ideas and use them right now in your life and get what's going on for me, like tap into this energy, you can get a lot of results. And get this. Maybe the biggest bonus of all is that not only am I busier than I've ever been and more productive than I've ever been, but I'm also enjoying it more than I ever have. There was a time in my life where when I had this much stuff to do, I would have woken up and been like, I just want to get that stuff off my plate. In fact, there was a time in my life where I actually equated success with not having to do anything. I really thought that at some point I would become so successful that I could do nothing, and I would be happy doing nothing. Well, that's not true, as it turns out, that when people retire and then they do nothing, they tend to become boring and bored. And I even heard of a study that said that when people retire and then they do nothing, that they actually die sooner. I don't know if that one's true, but it kind of rang true for me. And that people that I know that are the happiest are actually the most productive. They're the most productive they've ever been in their lives. So having all of this incredible opportunity in my life, having all of these amazing projects, being able to work with all these different people, I'm not only more productive, but I'm actually more satisfied with my life, and I'm happier, if that makes sense. So in this program, that's what I'm going to try to help you achieve too, is I want you to become the happiest you've ever been and also the most productive that you've ever been. Let me take a minute here and tell you about the format of this program, how to use it, and how to get the most from it. This program is broken into a series of 18 sessions, 18 sessions. We're starting with the introductory session here, which is a long video session. And then what you're going to do is you're going to watch the first Fast Start session right after this. And there are 5 Fast Start sessions. You're going to be watching one of each of the 5 Fast Start sessions for the first 5 days of the program. And in each of those, you're going to be doing an exercise. And then after that, you've got 12 more longer sessions that you're going to be watching one per week. Okay, one per week. So you're going to be watching the one introductory video session right now that you're watching. Then after this, you're going to watch the first fast start session. Then for the next 4 days, you're going to watch 4 more short fast start sessions and do the exercise. This is going to prepare you for the coming 12 weeks. And you're going to watch 1 video a week for the next 12 weeks after this. So does that make sense to you? And after 90 days of doing this whole series, going through all 18 sessions, you are going to wake up productive. So let's talk about a few of the things that are preventing us from being productive and managing our time as well as we possibly could. The first thing that I want to talk about is that we now live in a culture where we are overwhelmed by choice. Okay, we're overwhelmed by choice. In the past, when there weren't many different options for things in life, 100 years ago, if you wanted to buy a car, there weren't that many car options, and most people couldn't afford them anyway, and so it was just a dream for most people. Well, nowadays, let's say you want to buy a computer. Where do you even start? I mean, there are so many different types of computers with so many different features. Do I buy the computer with the faster hard drive? Do I buy the computer with the bigger hard drive? Do I buy the faster processor, or is it even going to make a difference when I'm just surfing the internet? How much memory do I need? Which brand is best? Which one has the best customer service? It's all so confusing. There's so much choice. Well, that is kind of counterbalanced by the idea that internally, a lot of us feel like we don't have enough personal choices for ourselves. So this is a weird dichotomy, right? We live in this culture of overwhelming choice and we're just confused. And internally, we feel like we don't have the choices that we want. So we have a lot of choice that's confusing us, but we don't have the options of having the choices that we want to have. So 2 of the most important skills that we're going to learn inside of Wake Up Productive are the skills of narrowing options when we have too many and generating more options for ourselves when we have too few. If we have too many options and we get confused, we just shut down. Our minds just kind of blur out and we can't focus anymore. And if we have too few options, then we feel trapped and we don't feel motivated to take action. So we need to develop these skills called narrowing options when there are too many and generating options when we don't have enough. So we live in a culture of being overwhelmed by options, and we need to face that. We need to deal with it. The next thing that we need to understand is that we are also dealing with a culture of distraction. We live in a culture now where everyone expects everyone else to be available all the time. Our phone is always ringing. There are text messages coming in. Our email is going off. We've got people stopping by. There's always something happening, and we're always being distracted. And likewise, we think that we should be able to distract everybody else. So whenever we get the whim, we just pick up our phone and call someone. We're always checking our email, and like when we hear it go off, I have to go check this thing out. So we're always being distracted. Distraction and interruption rob us of more productivity than just about any other single factor. Distraction and interruption. And one of the things that we need to do is learn to minimize and eliminate distraction and interruption. I have a good friend who's a very, very successful guy. He and I were having a conversation a few months ago, and he said, I actually believe now that minimizing distraction and interruption is just as high a priority as any of the most important projects that you have on your plate. Okay, so it's that important that we minimize distraction and interruption, because we are now living in a culture of complete distraction. It's like the norm. It's what's happening everywhere. Next, we're becoming what I call the obsessive snacking culture. The obsessive snacking culture. And what I mean by that is that instead of eating a full, healthy meal and then allowing that to process inside of us and then eating another healthy meal, we snack. We eat a little bit of this and we eat a little bit of that, and we're always snacking between meals. That's the physical version. But that's not the one that's the most important. We're also snacking with our attention. You'll notice on the internet, video clips are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. We don't buy entire albums anymore. We just buy the song. And now we just buy the ringtone for our phone. And with MP3 players and the 10,000 songs in our car, we don't even listen to the whole song anymore. If we're listening to the radio, we're just clicking through it obsessively. We're snacking on things. Now later inside of Wake Up Productive, I'm going to talk about the idea of training your focus and expanding your ability to focus on one thing, because I think that if you obsessively snack on things, whether they be food or whether they be relationships with other people or whether they be learning, like a program like this, if you obsessively snack, you're going to be missing 80 or 90% of all the value. And we need to go deeper. We need to train ourselves to focus and go deeper on the things that are important to us and not teach our minds to become distractible. The next concept that we need to understand is that we are beginning to live in the universal culture of multitasking, of parallel processing. We are doing a million things at once. And I don't think that we're going to be able to help that we have a lot of things to do as our culture evolves. There are just more things that we want to learn. We want to get more involved in hobbies. We want to learn more about different things. The internet has made it so anyone can learn about anything for free just by surfing the internet and watching videos and getting education. I think that's a miracle. The problem, though, is, the snacking issue that I mentioned just a moment ago, but also that we start doing too many things at once. We start spinning too many plates, and we're getting dragged from one to the next to the next. Our focus is getting fragmented, like I just mentioned. But worse, we're starting to not be able to keep one plate spinning, and so they start to fall. And as it turns out, multitasking is very inefficient, and I'll explain that to you a little bit later. There are some periods in the day where you have to multitask, where you have to do a lot of things kind of at once. You check your email, and there's an email, and it requires you to call somebody, and then do another thing, and then email, and then go do this other thing online. So we're going to have to actually schedule our multitasking, so to speak. We're going to have to narrow it into little windows and do it inside of a window so it doesn't get out of control. But the mindset is we have to really minimize multitasking if we want to maximize productivity. And what we're going to learn how to do is get good at focusing on one thing that's really important and staying focused on it for a chunk of time and then disconnecting from it. When you're doing too many things at once, you can't disconnect from any of them. And that means that when you're laying in bed at night, you can't just relax and go to sleep, satisfied that you did a great full day of work. You're worried about what's going on. Oh, what do I do tomorrow? And what am I going to do? Oh, and your mind's going crazy. You're parallel processing while you're trying to sleep. And when you're at work, you're doing a million things at once, and you're thinking, oh, wow, I really need to get some sleep. And so when it just gets tangled, you get into that what Tony Schwartz calls the gray zone, where it's all just a big mess. That really robs you of energy. So we want to minimize parallel processing. We want to minimize multitasking. And the multitasking that we do, we want to do it inside of little windows. And we're going to work on that later in the program. But we just need to be aware that we're also moving into a culture of multitasking. And while that's happening, while it's running off, we need to not get swept up in it. We need to step back, get a little bit of altitude, and make sure that we're only focused on those things that are really important to get us the results that we want. Another huge challenge that we have to overcome, a big challenge that we face in our quest for productivity and for being effective at life and managing our time well, is that our culture is now becoming more concerned with entertainment than we are with results. And I mean that on all levels. When we watch a movie, we're more interested in being entertained by the movie than we are in learning how to become a better person by watching it. When we watch the news, we're more interested in getting entertained in the shock factor than we are in actually learning what's going on in the world. When we eat a meal, we're more interested in having our senses entertained than we are in getting some, actual nutrients inside of us. And so the culture of entertainment is stripping out all the nutrition that lies underneath all of these different things that I'm talking about. And it's just kind of feeding us the thin veneer, the thing that titillates and excites our senses. So we have to realize that if we're going to grow, if we're going to become more productive, if we're going to become better at managing our time and getting results, is to not distract ourselves with too much entertainment, and that we need to discipline ourselves to focus on the things that get results. And that in the long run, if we entertain ourselves too much, that we're going to wind up entertaining ourselves to death. We're going to lose the ability to focus, and we're not going to get the results that we want. And if we discipline ourselves a little bit, we focus more, we expand our ability to focus, and we only focus on those things that are getting us results, we'll learn to enjoy those more and more and more, and we'll experience the long-term benefit of it. I have friends, as an example, who, they're not really that interested in taking care of their health. And when I say, why not? What I underlying their answers, what they're saying is, because it's not that fun to do. And, I've been at that place in my life too, where it's like, well, it's not that fun to eat food that's healthy. But the reality is, it's a lot more fun to feel good all the time and to have high energy and to feel productive than it is to have just a little bit of fun eating some food. But until you get that, until you experience it, until you build up the momentum and you kind of get that escape velocity in life where you really are experiencing that in life 24/7, you have that concrete realization, then you're just going to say, let me just do the entertaining thing. So you got to watch when your mind pulls you and your emotions pull you and your senses pull you. Let's go get some idle entertainment. Let's engage in some idle gossip. Let's eat some candy. Let's watch some, guilty pleasure movie or TV and say, am I really going to feel good after I do that? Why don't I go do something that feeds my spirit, right? That feeds me on another level and helps me develop into the person that I want to become. And the more that you do that, the more that you'll find it becomes a really positively addictive process. And I think you're really going to like it. So beware of the culture of entertainment and try to avoid it as much as you possibly can. Another important realization is that we are becoming a culture of magic pills, of instant results. And I think one of the underlying beliefs that is really hurting us is that there is a magic pill. I used to know somebody, I used to have a friend, and she used to talk about how her and one of her friends, they had a little inside joke. And anytime something would happen, like their hair would start turning gray, or one of their teeth would start to hurt, or they'd start getting wrinkles, they'd just say, laser, laser. And if there's not a laser treatment for it now, there will be one in 5 years, so I don't really need to worry about it. And there is a little bit of truth to that. Right? We are developing technological advances that allow us to cure things very quickly in some cases. But the idea that there's a quick fix or a magic bullet or a magic pill for the important things in life actually harms you. It's counterproductive. Believing it actually hurts you. And the example that I like to use a lot is if you go to the doctor and you're feeling some pain and the doctor says, well, take this pill, and you take the pill and the pain goes away. What if you had something, deep down, a disease that was starting? Or what if you had something underneath, an imbalance that you could have just put back into balance, but because you didn't, you covered over the symptom, you threw yourself even more out of balance, and the underlying problem became worse. Right? If your car starts running funny and the check oil light comes on, you don't reach into the dashboard and pull out the light bulb. You say, okay, what's the underlying cause here? What's the thing that's really going wrong? And so if you want to become successful in your life in terms of productivity and time management and getting great results, you have to let go of this idea that there's instant pudding and magic pills for the important things. And you have to start saying, okay, what do I need to do in the system? What do I need to start doing on a daily basis so that when I wake up in 90 days, I'm getting the results that I want? The idea of the magic pill is immaturity speaking. It's the child inside of us speaking. It's the kid that wants the I want it now mommy, right? It's instant gratification talking. And if we want to become as productive as we possibly can, we have to grow up. We have to grow past that. So beware of the culture of the magic pill and of the instant results, because that's something that's very seductive and it's something that will draw you in. And if you believe in it too much, you'll wind up trying a bunch of magic pills that won't work, and you'll be worse off than you could have been if you just started doing the right thing immediately. And we're going to be talking about a lot of what the right thing is in this program, don't worry. And the last key understanding that I want to get across to you is the idea that I got from systems thinking, which is the short-term results of an action and the long-term results of an action are typically different and often opposite. Okay, so you might want to write this one down. This is very important. The short-term results of an action and the long-term results of an action are typically different and often opposite. So let's use the example that we were just talking about, food. Let's say that you get yourself a big bag of some of those really cheesy corn chips, okay? Really flavorful and crispy. What's the short-term result of taking the action of eating one of those chips? Well, it's pleasure. You get to experience the crunchy feeling, you taste the saltiness in your mouth, and you get to experience the mouthfeel and the joy of swallowing that yummy food. What's the long-term result of eating those chips? Well, usually within about 10 or 15 minutes, you'll notice that your energy starts to drop. Your body starts to freak out because there's often too much sodium and MSG and a bunch of other stuff in there. And you do this for a long enough time and you'll gain weight, you'll mess your system up, and you could even start to really harm yourself. You can give yourself disease. So what do we do when that happens as humans? We stop paying attention to how we feel. We get out of touch with our body and our emotions so that when we start feeling bad, we just don't pay attention to it. Or, even worse, we go drink some caffeine to try to pep ourselves up because our body's starting to feel weak or sick, or we start to take some aspirin and we just send ourselves on this spiral. Right? I'm starting to sound like a health nut now, aren't I? Well, in a sense I kind of am, because I've found that the more of that stuff I cut out of my life, the healthier I become, the more clarity I have, and so I am a little bit of an advocate for being exceptionally healthy. But the bottom line is the short-term result of eating the chip and the long-term result are very different. Likewise, let's take the opposite end of that continuum. Let's say it's eating raw broccoli, for instance. Not a lot of people that I know would stand up and say raw broccoli is my very favorite food. I happen to eat a lot of raw broccoli. It wouldn't be the first thing that strikes me. I actually put it in salads and things like that. But the short-term result of eating raw broccoli as you're eating it, especially if you're not accustomed to it and you haven't eaten a lot of raw broccoli, is you're going to go, it kind of tastes like grass and I don't know. But what's the long-term result of eating raw broccoli? Well, for the next few hours, your body's going to feel good. It's going to be getting a lot of nutrients, and it's going to be getting a lot of different things that make it feel great. And it's going to be thanking you with energy. And if you eat raw broccoli over the long term, raw broccoli has all kind of antioxidants and anti-cancer properties that I've read about and so forth. I'm no doctor, by the way, just a little caveat. I've read about this stuff and I've found that it works for me. But if you do it long term, you'll probably find, if you're like most people that eat a lot of raw broccoli, that it helps you feel healthier. You feel better in the long run. Short-term results, different from the long-term results. Well, that's the way that most important areas of life are. The short-term and the long-term are different. My friend Joe Polish says, life is hard if you live it the easy way, and easy if you live it the hard way. And that's a quote that I think is worth writing down. Life is hard if you live it the easy way, and easy if you live it the hard way. And if you can just get a little bit of momentum, you can just get yourself doing the right things on a regular basis, consistently, before your mind runs off and you go, I got to go have those chips. I think that you'll find that you'll get more and more momentum. I think you'll find that you'll get more and more momentum. It'll start to build an energy and kind of a force of its own, and it'll get to the point where it tips over, it's the tipping point, and your life will become so good, you'll become so productive that you won't want to go back to the old way of doing things that are only short term. So here's a little phrase for you to kind of sum up these ideas, these key understandings. Change the system, not the symptom. Change the system, not the symptom. If you go to work on the symptoms, you're just going to be repressing. You're just going to be pushing down something that's trying to tell you something. If you go to work on the system and affect the system and the structure and make the structure of your life better, you will get exponentially better. And then you won't even need to worry about the symptoms as much because they won't come up. And even things like eating raw broccoli, if you will just do it every day for 30 days, you can reacclimate yourself. If you'll just quit watching the guilty pleasure news for 30 days, you'll reacclimate and you won't miss it anymore. But those 30 days will be a challenge. And inside of Wake Up Productive, I'm going to teach you how to deal with those 30 days and how to make sure you get through them and you come out the other side having the life and the results that you want. Now I'd like to introduce you to what I call the 11 principles of personal productivity. The 11 principles of personal productivity. And in these 11 principles, you're going to get some mindsets, you're going to get some beliefs, you're going to get some paradigms that are going to act as a foundation for all of the other material that you're going to learn in this program. you need to take notes on this stuff. You need to really let this stuff sink in and try to comprehend it the best you can. You know, this is going to be the first time you're going to hear a lot of these things, and so some of it's going to be new. That's okay. Let it sink in, think about it, relate to it, see how you can find experiences of it in your life. Because if you can go through this part before we get into the techniques, you're going to find that it really helps you make the techniques 2, 3, 4, 5 times as effective. So let's get started. The first principle is that everyone can be productive. Every one of us can be productive. In fact, not only can every one of us be productive, but every one of us can be creative as well. And I think creativity it's one of those kind of weird concepts. Nobody really knows what it is. No one can really describe it. But in a way, we all have a sense for ourselves of what inner creativity is. Well, I think that creativity and productivity go hand in hand. And the first principle is we can all be productive and we can all be creative. And I think it's important here to mention that some people are more creative and productive inside of a structure of achievement where we know what the rules are and we know what all the next steps are. And some of us are more productive and creative inside of what you might call a non-structure, or outside of the structure, or in total chaos where we can just create from nothing. Some people like the paint by numbers where they can be a little bit creative and paint outside the boxes, and some people like a blank canvas. So right now I'd like to ask you, which one are you? Are you more productive inside of a structure of achievement, or are you more productive with a blank canvas? You might want to write that down right now, because that's something that we're going to be talking about a little bit in this program. And as I give you different concepts, what you're going to need to do is you're going to either need to turn them into a structure that you can achieve within, or you're going to need to use them as tools to paint your canvas. Now, when I said earlier that we can all be creative, what I mean by that is that we're all creative depending on whether or not we're in the optimal situation, the optimal conditions. Some people, like I mentioned, are more achieve within a structure. Some people are more creative when they're working within a framework. As an example, I have people that I work with on my team that are more of what I would call an organizer person. These are people that make lists, that are always structuring and organizing everything. And if they have a checklist of 10 things to do, they feel like they can be very creative in how they get those things done. There are other people on my team that I actually refer to as creatives that if they saw that checklist, they'd go, "Oh, that repulses me. That doesn't make me feel good at all." But if you said to them, "Could you make me a list of 10 things so that I could get them done?" The creative person typically could say, "Yeah," and they could rattle off what the things are. If you give them the blank canvas, they'll fill it up with the list. If you give the organizer person the list of the 10 things, they'll say, "Oh, within that framework, I can be very creative." So which is the framework or the non-framework that you feel creative inside, and where specifically? You might want to just take a moment right now, maybe even pause this video and ask yourself, when do you feel most creative? And when do you feel most productive? What are the conditions? What's the environment? Who else is around? Look back at the last 3 times when you felt incredibly creative and see if you can find out what the commonality is. Because later in this program, we're going to be setting up structures to support you and to inspire you. And later in this program, what we're going to do is we're going to use these ideas and we're going to try to set up an environment for you that inspires your productivity and inspires your creativity. Now, the other side of the coin, becoming incredibly productive, again, which anyone can do, and incredibly creative, which anyone can do, is identifying your unique talents. All right, the things that you came from the factory with, your hard wiring, your gifts, and then developing them into what I call strengths. So here's how this works. The things that you come with, the gifts that are on the inside, I call these your talents. Okay? Talent implies something that's innate, inborn. When you take your talent and you develop it into a skill, okay, you actually practice over and over and over until you can use that talent powerfully, then it becomes a strength. So the internal is the talent, the external is a strength. You look at a great athlete like a Tiger Woods, for instance. It's clear that he is talented at all the different stuff it takes to play golf. He's just talented at being a golfer. His dad was a golfer, loved golf, raised him playing golf. He had the internal stuff, but he also had the development. Okay? He had the father teaching him, he had the great coaching, and he took that talent and he developed it into a strength. And now, you have a master. You have someone that's reached the genius level of efficiency, of effectiveness, of productivity, of creativity. So what you need to do is you need to identify your inner talents, and you need to develop them into strengths. And what we're going to do in this program is we're going to focus on identifying your unique talents, and I'm going to give you some methods for doing that. And then we're going to focus on developing them into strengths so that you can really get the fruits of your labors, and you can really take what you've got and just get the most out of it. So principle number one, everyone can be incredibly productive. Everyone can be incredibly creative. We just have to figure out in the context within which we need to do it, and also where our talents are, and develop those into strengths. When we combine those ideas, it just takes blows the roof off of everything. Okay, productivity principle number two. Managing time is actually about managing yourself. One of my favorite quotes that I've ever heard about time management is actually something that argues with time management, and it's a quote from Stephen Covey, and it goes like this. Stephen Covey says, "Time management is a misnomer. The challenge is to manage ourselves." You can't really manage time. Time just flows. We only get so much of it, and we all get the same amount. Whereas ourselves, that's a completely different story. When you try to manage time, you're trying to manage something that you really have no control of. It's really a self-torture method, right? If you say, I want to manage my time better, you're not really talking about managing your time, so when you go try, it's going to be elusive and it's going to be very frustrating. If you say, on the other hand, I want to learn how to manage myself better, that creates a whole new level of awareness, a whole new level of insight. So what do I mean by managing yourself? What I mean is that when you say I want to manage time, it's an external thing. You're projecting, you're kind of almost not taking responsibility. When you say I'm going to manage myself, you're taking full responsibility for what you're doing and for the results that you're getting. And you're saying, you know what, I need to manage myself better. Managing yourself is about getting control of yourself. And when you try to control yourself, you start to realize that you really have much less control than you think that you do. I know somebody that I was talking to recently, and I said, I've been learning this great stuff from this person about, how to better do business and, create value for other people. And it's really interesting because I'm having a lot of financial success as a result of doing this. And they said, yeah, I could have financial success if I wanted, but I don't really care about any of that stuff, and I think it's just manipulating people and whatever, and I don't know. And I said, well, I don't know. I don't really know if you could get yourself to do this because, frankly, you really can't get yourself to do much in your life. And this is somebody I know that's a friend. I was just kind of, messing with them. And they said, no, I could if I wanted. And I said, oh, yeah? They said, yeah. I said, okay. How about this? Try fasting for 36 hours. Okay? So in other words, at the end of a day, go to sleep, wake up the next day, don't eat anything the entire day, go to sleep that night, and wake up the next morning and then eat. Fast for 36 hours. Oh, no, I don't want to do that either. Well, why not? I mean, it would be fun, just as an experiment. No. Okay, bottom line, we are not as in control of ourselves as we think. And one of the most enlightening things that I've ever learned is that we are really almost like robots. That we wake up every day, we do the exact same things, we think the same thoughts, we feel the same emotions, we go through the same movements, and we're just laying this, it's like laying pavement over pavement over pavement, and we get to the point where we can't do anything different. But we deceive ourselves, and we tell ourselves that we could change if we wanted. We're just not choosing to. It's a great little trick that we play on ourselves. The bottom line here in principle number 2 is that it's much harder to manage yourself than you think it is. You need a lot of help in this area. If you doubt me, try this. Tomorrow, don't eat any food. Only drink water. Just try it. If you've never fasted, this will be one of the most enlightening experiences of your life. For the first few hours, you'll feel good about it. You'll be like, I got this handled. You start getting into the afternoon, your stomach starts churning, your blood sugar gets low, you'll be saying, whoa, I don't know if this is the right thing. Then late in the afternoon, early evening, something scary will happen. Your mind will take over, and it'll start saying things to you like, is this healthy? Maybe this isn't good. Maybe I should look up and see if anyone's ever died from this. I don't know. I don't know if this is good. And you'll realize you're totally out of control. And it'll just be because you skipped a couple of meals. Now, the good news is that there are ways to learn to manage yourself better. There are ways to get yourself under control. There are techniques you can use, and I'm going to teach you some of those. But it's very important that you realize that this is about managing yourself. It's not about managing time. Okay, productivity principle number 3 is that we have 3 brains, not just one. And I want to show you something. So hold on a sec. Got my little flip chart here. Let me draw something for you. So that's my abstract artistic rendering of your 3 brains. I know I'm a fantastic artist. This right here represents your brainstem and this little primal brain that we all have called your limbic system. Okay? This is where the part of your brain called the amygdala is. This next level of brain, this is your mammalian brain. This is your emotional brain. And this big part on the outside here, that's your cortex and your frontal lobes. This is where the intellectual part of you lives. And what's interesting about these 3 brains, as the theory goes, there's a guy named Dr. Paul MacLean who came up with this. He believes that our 3 brains grew on top of each other as we evolved. So this is what some people call the lizard brain. And this is what some people call the mammal brain or the tail wagging brain. And this is what some people call the human part of the brain. Well, what I've discovered over time is that we think that we are our thinking brain. We think that we're the rational, logical us all the time. What we don't realize is that these older brains are where all the power is. And those old brains are the ones that are really controlling us. So we like to imagine that we have a thought and then we can will our emotions and our body and how we feel about things to be different. That's the illusion that we all have. The reality is our old brains that are concerned with things like sex and power and controlling other people and feeling threatened and getting love and affection and getting approval from other people, these are the things that actually take over and take control of us. And they take control of the thinking part of our brain, and they make us rationalize things and do all kinds of crazy stuff that we never would have imagined. Now, what's fascinating about the 3 brains is that each of them, the old one, all right, the limbic system, which is our physical brain, the middle one, the mammalian, which is the emotional brain, and the more recent one, which is the cortex or the logical, mental, if you will, brain. These 3 brains operate very efficiently individually, but they're not very well connected to each other. And so we often experience conflicts of the physical, the emotional, and the logical. And you'll notice that when you're stuck in life trying to figure out what to do and you're feeling pulled in multiple directions, it's usually because your 3 brains can't communicate very well with each other. They're not very well in rapport. And what you'll find is that you'll be emotionally pulled to do something, but you really shouldn't be doing it. Or you really want to go do this thing that's going to give you pleasure, but your emotions are feeling guilty. And that's where a lot of our inner conflict comes, is from the 3 brains. And if you understand the 3 brains and you understand how to integrate them and use them together, you'll find that becoming more productive and managing yourself and your time better becomes a lot easier. So we have 3 brains, not just one. That is principle number 3. Productivity principle number 4 is habit is destiny. Habit is destiny. There are a lot of different sayings about this. I heard one, I don't remember where this one came from, but it is first you shape your habits and then they shape you. If you do something habitually for a little while, all of a sudden you'll get into the flow and you won't be able to change it. Through a lot of different studies and a lot of different research, I've now come to believe that we have what you could almost think of as freeways that we create in our 3 brains and in our bodies. And you might think of these as your physical freeways or roadways, your emotional freeways or roadways, and your mental or your logical freeways or roadways. And they've even discovered that in the brain there's a process called myelination, where when you think a thought and you think that thought over and over and you think it, you keep going, that it lays this stuff called myelin that's literally like putting pavement over a road. And it builds up that neural connection so that it becomes easier and more natural to think that thought. So the more you think it, the more you think it. In terms of emotions, okay, we've got these little globules of emotion that are inside of cells all over, and they're sticking off these little, kind of like little reactor sites where when the system says release, all over the body it releases these chemicals into us. My mentor, Jerry Ballinger, used to say that emotions are the most powerful and addictive chemicals in existence. Emotions. And what we find is that if we get emotions triggered by a certain thing, they get triggered over and over, it paves that path so it becomes quicker and more instantaneous to be triggered in those emotions. And same thing with our bodies. We have what's called muscle memory. If you go through a movement enough times over and over and over, it's like just paving a road, and it becomes natural, and you just do that thing. If you sit with poor posture over and over and over, eventually that's what happens. You can't not sit with poor posture. In fact, I've had poor posture for so many years of my life that I have to be conscious of it a lot more than someone who naturally has good posture, and I have to work on it. And I find myself all the time, slumped over doing something. I realize, I'm just unconscious. That's something that's come from years past in my life, and I have to sit up, tuck in the tummy, roll the shoulders back, and be conscious of my posture. Well, if you will open your mind to this idea, right, that we have these three brains and that habit is destiny, you'll start to notice that most of what you do is the exact same thing over and over and over, physically, logically, emotionally, and that you've paved these routes and these have now become your habits. And so we're going to go to work on the habit level, and we're going to try to make the things that you do, that you need to do to be productive, into routines, into habits, into processes that you do regularly. And I'm going to introduce you to some very powerful concepts to do that. But for now, we need to understand that principle number 4 is habit is destiny. Productivity principle number 5 is that internal chaos creates external chaos. So if you have chaos on the inside, you're going to have chaos on the outside. And actually, chaos on the outside can trigger inner chaos as well. But if you have chaos on the inside, you're going to make your life chaotic. I'm going to introduce you to a concept in this program that I call the inner butterfly effect, which essentially is that it's from chaos theory, where they say, if a butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, can it trigger a storm in the other? Well, if you have chaos inside, it can trigger huge chaos on the outside. So what we want to do is we want to notice how much chaos do we have on the inside? How much inner chaos in our mind, our feelings, our body, our emotions? How much chaos do we have? And how can we start to minimize and smooth and soothe and eliminate that chaos so that we can have less chaos on the outside? So principle number 5, inner chaos creates outer chaos. And we need to learn to manage our inner chaos, and the outside will manage itself. Productivity principle number 6 is focusing our talent and strength on our biggest opportunity. Okay, so focusing our talent and our strength on our biggest opportunity. In life, there are only a few things that really matter. If you will work on your biggest opportunities every day, you will find that you will have huge long-term success. Have you ever heard that if you save $1 a day, that at the end of 56 years, you'll be a millionaire? I think the math goes, if you save $1 a day for 56 years and you get, I think it's 10% interest, you'll wind up a millionaire. You'll have $1 million. Why don't we save $1 a day for 56 years? Because we don't focus on the important things. All right? We don't do it. And by the way, if you do that every day for 56 years, I think it's like $21,000 that you've invested to get $1 million back at the end of the game. Why don't we focus on the important things? Well, we're going to talk more about that in this program, but the bottom line is that you don't want to just focus on the important things. You want to focus on the biggest opportunities that you have, and you want to use your inner talent, which you have consciously developed into an external strength, and focus it on that biggest opportunity. And that's where you get the exponential multiplying leverage, because these things affect each other. So, take your talent, developed into strength, and focus it on your biggest opportunity. That's productivity principle number 6. Productivity principle number 7 is that your future can either be an extension of your past or it can be something new that you create. For most people, their future will just be an extension of the past. They're going to do the same things that they did in the past, and they're going to get the same results that they had in the past. In fact, most people don't see any option in the future other than what they experienced in the past. And this is because we don't have a frame of reference for something that we haven't experienced. So if we've never seen a particular type of animal before and then we see one, we're not going to know what it is. And in fact, we might look at it and get confused or not really be able to figure out what's going on if we see it because we just don't have a frame of reference. We might be scared of it. We might want to just run away. Some people might get curious about it, but the bottom line is that if you don't have a frame of reference for something in your mind, you're not going to know what to do with it when it shows up in your life. If you change your paradigm and you say, I'm not going to just live more of my past, I'm going to live a future that I'm going to create, it instantly changes your entire life. So tomorrow can be just another day of everything that's happened to you, or today can be the last day of the way that you used to be. Okay, so your future can be just the same thing all over again, or now can be the moment where everything that used to happen changes. And a lot of people like to hold on to their past. They like to hold on to their story. They like to hold on to all their explanations and the things that they do to get approval and all that stuff, and they just won't let go of them to create the future that they really want. If you try to hold on to the way that you used to be, you can't become the best you. If you try to hold on to all those stories and excuses and explanations for everything, there's no way that you can develop into your highest potential. So, principle number 7 is that the future can just be an extension and a replay of the past, or it can be something new that you can create. But in order to create that thing, you have to let go of the past. You have to let go of your comfort zone, and you've got to create something that's entirely new. Principle number 8, focus on what you want to create, not on what you want to avoid. Some people are more motivated by moving away from what they don't want, and some people are more motivated by moving toward what they want. Now, this is a little bit challenging because what I've found is that we really all need both. We're all motivated by both, but most of us are more motivated by one or the other, and we don't know how this thing works, and we don't understand because it's all unconscious. Now, I tend to think that negative motivation, moving away from what we don't want, tends to be a stronger motivator, and that's because negative things that happen can be a lot worse than a positive thing. So, like losing your arm is probably a lot worse than winning $1 million, right? Or death is probably a lot worse than, getting a $100 million mansion, right? Would be on the positive side. So the negative stuff, the downside, can be very motivating, right? But the positive stuff is important to focus on. So here's how this works. If you focus in your mind on what you don't want, you will be more likely to create it. If you focus in your mind on what you want, you'll also be more likely to create it. I learned from neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis that the unconscious mind doesn't have a concept for the negative. Only the conscious mind does. So if I say, don't do this thing, all right, if I say stop smoking, you can, with your conscious mind, you can go, oh, I'll put my cigarette down and stop smoking. If I tell your unconscious mind stop smoking, all it hears is smoking because it doesn't know how to interpret not doing something. And what a lot of people do when they smoke, for instance, is they go, I got to stop smoking, got to stop smoking, stop smoking. And the unconscious mind, all it hears is smoking, smoking, smoke, 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 smoke. That can be counterproductive. So what we want to do, even if you're an away from motivated person, even if you're more motivated by the things you need to move away from, you got to start with the outcome that you want. If you saw the movie The Secret, right, they talked about focus on what you want and then believe it, and it will become more real in your life. I'm not trying to get too woo-woo or new age on you here. Sometimes I get accused of that stuff a little bit, and I really am not that much of a, kind of one of those out there thinkers, but there's a lot of value in this idea. If you focus on what you don't want, you're going to be more likely to bring it into your reality. If you focus on what you want, you're going to be more likely to bring that into reality as well. And we'll talk more about that in this program. But the bottom line is that this principle is important. Focusing on the outcome you want, the thing you want to have happen, not on the thing you don't want, will make you much more likely to get there. Productivity principle number 9. Choose, don't decide. I have a question for you. What's the difference between a choice and a decision? It's a fascinating question, really. What do the two words imply? What's the connotation of the word decide, and what's the connotation of the word choose? Well, decide has that word side, all right, that piece of the word, which is also the same fragment of a word that's used in words like homicide and suicide, and it means to cut off possibilities, to kill possibilities. So to decide means to cut off possibility. Choose, on the other hand, implies having multiple options and choosing the one that you want. Some of the people that I know that are the most negative and pessimistic are always using words like, I have to decide, I've got to make a decision, I've got to decide on what I want to do. Whereas the people that I know that seem to be a little more successful in life are always saying, I need to choose from my multiple options. I need to choose the best path for myself. Now, what does this imply? It implies that some people live in a reality, their paradigm, their view of reality, is that they only have a couple of options and they need to decide which one to take. It's like, which is the least evil thing to do. Whereas some people live in a reality where they have many options and they need to choose the best one. Now, I mentioned that now we're overwhelmed by choice in a lot of ways, but not in the important areas of life. We're overwhelmed by choice in the trivial areas, but in the areas that really matter, personal health, development, relationships, there's really not as much choice as we'd like, and we have to develop the ability to create more choice. But having the paradigm, the approach, the idea, I am choosing right now, I am in control, and I'm making choice in life, it's very, very important, and it's principle number 9. Principle number 10. Balance organization with restricting creativity. Some people really like to be super, super structured and organized, and some people like to not be organized at all. And I think that what you'll find if you're a real super structured person, that you actually could use a little bit more just going with the flow in your life. Every person that's super structured that I've said that to, you know what, you could probably go with the flow a little bit more and you'd get a lot out of that, has always said, you know what, you're probably right. And every person that likes to completely go with the flow, doesn't like to plan anything, if I say, you know what, you could probably do well planning a little bit more and structuring your life a little bit more, they always say, yeah, I probably could. And what we need to do is not go to one extreme or the other, but we need to strike a balance. And we need to strike our own balance. So what you need to do here is you got to search your soul, you got to ask yourself a question, and you got to really, be honest with yourself. Where could you use a little bit more structure and a little bit more organization, or where could you go with the flow a little bit more? Because if you're a person that likes lots of options, to totally go with the flow, don't like to be controlled by any structure, and you structure yourself too much, you'll kill your inspiration, you'll kill your creativity. So you need to add just the right amount. And if you're a person that loves structure and organization and to have a plan and to have every step put in front of you, if you go with the flow too much, it'll drive you nuts. And you'll wind up not being able to get anything done because you'll be too confused. So you've got to balance organizing with not becoming too structured, and you've got to balance going with the flow and not get kind of too free. So we're seeking a balance, and that's principle number 10. Principle number 11, and this is the last principle, is that if you want to wake up productive, you must go to the next level. You must become the next version of you. You must go to the next paradigm. Okay, so if you want to wake up productive, you must take your thinking to the next level. Einstein had a great quote, and I'll paraphrase it. We can't solve the significant problems that we face at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. So what does this mean? Well, it means that whatever level of thinking you're at right now, you can't solve your significant problems without going to the next level. One of the best ways to solve a significant problem is to find someone that's 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years further down the road from you, that has 5 or 10 years more experience. They will look at your situation and the solution will be obvious to them. This is how we work. But you can't see what the obvious solutions are. So one of the things that I'm going to do during this program is I'm going to pull you up to the next level. I'm going to zoom you out. I'm going to give you some altitude, and I'm also going to give you a lot of techniques and step-by-step methods that you can use. And these, hopefully, after 90 days of using them, are going to shift your paradigm. They're going to shift the way you see the world. They're going to shift the way you see yourself. So if you find yourself seeing things differently, that's good. If you want to get to the next level, you must shift your perspective. You must take the quantum leap. And if you find yourself looking at things differently, seeing the world differently, don't let that freak you out. That's good. That's what we need to do. If you want to create productivity for yourself, if you want to get the maximum result, you have to become like you version 2.0, or the next evolution of yourself. And that is principle number 11. So that's the end of the introduction to Wake Up Productive. You've learned some key principles and mindsets, and a few even paradigm shifts in there. And this material is going to help us with all of the rest of the ideas and exercises and techniques that we're going to learn in this program. So take what you've learned, review your notes right now, put a little star next to the biggest insight that you just got, and maybe ask yourself, how can I apply that in my life? How can I apply that in my life? Where am I going to apply that next? And then write down an action step. One action step that you're going to take as a result of going through this introductory section. One action step. And once you've finished with that, go on to the next video where we're going to start digging in and doing some very powerful exercises.